three of the richest men in America died on the Titanic. One of them was John Jacob Astor. A year later, the Federal Reserve Private Bank was created. Coincidence? Or was something bigger brewing behind the scenes? Before Wall Street and private banking ran America, one family quietly owned Manhattan: the Astors. Now, they weren't oil tycoons or railroad kings, but they owned the land under essentially everything. They started earning their money through the fur business, and later graduated to real estate. And their real estate empire made them America's first multi-millionaire family. By the late 1800s, if you were paying rent in New York, you were probably paying an Astor. Enter Carolyn Astor, or simply known as Mrs. Astor. She created and curated something called the 400, which was a list of 400 people that were considered the only socially acceptable elite in New York City. So if you weren't on this list, you weren't in the room. Simple as that. Mrs. Astor's influence helped maintain the prominence of the old money families in the country. And the old money definitely thought they were still in control, but the new money was on the rise. The Vanderbilts, headed by Cornelius Vanderbilt, was a railroad tycoon, and a name you do know, J.P. Morgan. Now, Morgan didn't just own property, he controlled liquidity. He had railroads, steel, banks, and when financial panic hit the country in 1907, the United States government called Morgan, not the Astors, which showed that the new money had the power shifting. Fast forward to November 1910, a secret meeting took place on Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia. A small group of powerful bankers and politicians met in private to design what would become the Federal Reserve Act. Among them, Senator Nelson Aldrich, Paul Warburg, and Frank Vanderlip, as well as an extremely close associate of J.P. Morgan, Henry Davidson. They traveled under fake names with no press and no records of the trip at the time. The goal? To restructure America's financial system. Now, let's fast forward another 3 years. 1913, the Federal Reserve Act is actually signed into law, creating a system of never-ending debt for Americans and eventually moving away from the gold standard and adopting a fiat or a fake, completely useless currency. Now, here's an interesting part. About a year before the Fed was created, the Titanic sunk, and you may be wondering, what does that have to do with the Federal Reserve? Well, on board were three of the richest men in America: J.J. Astor, Benjamin Guggenheim, and Isidor Straus. And all three were reportedly extremely against centralized banking. And here's another twist. J.P. Morgan was supposed to be on the Titanic. He canceled his trip just days before the voyage. Kinda just like how Larry Silverstein didn't show up to work for the first time in decades on the morning of 9/11, 2001. Anyways, once Astor was gone, the old money had lost three of its predominant figures, and this is exactly how the Fed came to be. After 1913, America entered a new era. The age of land barons faded, and the age of financial architects began. But what happens if Astor never boards the Titanic? What if J.P. Morgan actually boarded instead? What if financial panic never hit in 1907? What if the meeting at Jekyll Island never took place? Would we still be in debt today? All interesting questions. Till next time.